What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vibra Live. Today, I got a very special guest joining me, someone that I've really followed, paid close attention to the last month or so. I wish I had found him a lot earlier. I feel like I'd be further ahead, but you know what? When you're patient, good things happen, and I'm just honored and appreciate that Jake will take the time and join us today. Here he is.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, brother.
For sure. So, for guys that you guys don't know, Jake, he is the director of the Digital Ascension Group. So, basically, after this bull run, once we all crush these altcoins we've been talking about, and we have to take that money in real life or take our stables or whatever and do something else with them, Jake is the person that is setting stuff up, making those relationships so where we'll be able to hopefully have a nice, easy transition into the next part of our crypto journeys.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, so like you said, Digital Ascension Group, I'm the director there. We're a multifamily office specializing in digital assets. The only one in the U.S. that I'm aware of. There's a few others that dabble, but we have professionals that are proficient with digital assets in each regard that a family office might need. So for those that don't know what a family office is, it's going to be a family or an individual that comes into, a significant amount of money. In my world, a significant amount of money is more than $20 million. That's kind of the low end where you might start looking at this model, establishing your estate, putting together structures and entities to make sure you're mitigating taxes and fostering the long-term preservation and growth of your wealth and capital or your assets, your investments, whatever you might have. And so, yeah, we do that specific for digital assets, provide custodial services, wealth management, CPA, accountant, funds and foundations, the estate planning, soup to nuts for anybody that comes into a good chunk of change during this bull run.
Yeah, that's something that I'm starting to see at the more people that I work with and meet, and as I grow, a lot of people have the question, well, Adam, if I didn't have you here to help me with all this and something happened to me, my family would have no clue. To find this stuff, I'm so nervous about that. And I always say, that these solutions are being built out right now. We're super early. And I think this is a great conversation to have because, $20 million, it sounds like to some people an insane amount of money. But these cryptos can do things that you never thought. And I think with inflation happening, it's not what it used to be 20 years ago, that number. And we're in different times right now. And I think just having that long-term mindset and not just being impulsive thinking, all right, I'm going to make millions of dollars, cash out, buy my Lambo. And then you have a bunch more problems that you haven't thought through yet.
Yeah. Well, it's so a lot of what I put together has been selfish, right? So did pretty well for myself in 20 and 21 during that bull run. We all wish we would have sold more. But anyway, did well enough that I started seeking these professionals out and aggregating them under, for myself, and then basically figured out that there wasn't really anybody else in the market that had put together a team like this. People are sporadically, scattered across the U.S. And then, there's a lot of people that say they deal in crypto, but they might know a little bit about Bitcoin and Ethereum and maybe some DeFi stuff, but they really have no idea where the space is headed or what they're going to need long-term to be able to actually help people. So we have the first ever wealth management account with standard custody and trust. They were recently purchased by Ripple. That acquisition is still pending the approval of the NYDFS. But, you mentioned, like for me, my wife has no clue. She would have no clue what to do if anything happened to me. And I had like 15 different wallets at one point, all with different seed key phrases. Everybody's got their best practice. You're writing it on a piece of paper. You're holding it at multiple locations. She might know where one is, but she's got no idea what to do with it if something actually happened. So for me to get things into institutional custody was a big plus. And we provide an ancillary service, so we're signer on our clients' accounts. The benefit that provides, so let's say you did come into 20 million, you could go direct to one of these custodians and hold your assets there, and you might have your wife or significant other on the account with you, right? But what happens if both of you are in a car wreck or a plane accident or something, you know, God forbid, happens to both of you at the same time? At least you have the custodian there that can help pass that to the next trustee that's supposed to be, you know, guarding your assets and providing that to your beneficiaries, your children. But we, you know, we're not going to be in the same place as you. We can make sure that that's orchestrated. So we provide the secondary signature on the transactions for our accounts. Everybody still controls their assets. It's the most secure cold wallet on the planet, at least by rating. And it's insured up to $50 million per vault in your segregated vault underneath our account. So really proud of that service. There's like 4 firms in the US that provide that, and we're one of them. So on the bleeding edge there. And then, like you mentioned, we're building out products and solutions for our clients there that allow them to produce income, leverage those assets, and do all the cool things that the wealthy people do to maintain their money and not pay taxes.
Yeah, no, that's the thing right there is I think new people coming into the space, once you've been here for a while, you start to see that DeFi is where it's at, and it's how much yield can you make? Where's the yield? And that's what I think the big money is going to seek and come after. That's what's going to bring value to XRP. I think it's going to bring value to XDC, even Stellar. I think once we start to see, you know, these mutual funds, these bonds, more of them start being put on chain as Ripple starts, or XRP, they start putting assets on chain, they start moving actual liquidities there, then we're going to see price appreciation. But I think that's where we need regulation for that. I think we're a little bit away from all these things happening. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree. So it's kind of the premise behind a utility token, right? There's the whole market's speculative right now, and it'll continue to be until there is regulatory clarity on stuff here in the US, and things begin to be used in applications that drive value across these protocols. The value is not really in the token. People speculate on what the price of a token might go to. That's why you might buy it. But in the real world, these investment banks and other people that are using these networks and enterprise applications, they're doing that to provide efficiencies that will actually reduce their costs, right? So, you know, the main one that a lot of people talk about is cross-border payments. There's obviously a lot of friction there. There's a lot of costs associated. So it's kind of like the killer app, the first thing that they're going to go after. But then you mentioned, you know, tokenization of financial products and markets. A lot of problems exist there with T+2 settlement. We got the Bitcoin ETF settling T+2 right now when it trades, you know, not real time, but close to real time, 24/7, 365, never sleeps. So I think at some point they'll definitely move everything over to real-time settlement. And in order to do that, they'll have to use these protocols and networks. And with that comes volume and more assets on chain. And the more transactions that happen on chain, that's what's going to push the price of the token up. That's facilitating those transactions. So those are the things that I like to look at. You know, there's a lot of people that speculate on Pepe and Jesus coin and whatever else there is out there. I'm pretty risk adverse. I like putting my money where I know it's going to pan out. Don't know when. None of us do. But you know, we know at some point that they are going to start using these networks and protocols, and that's when we will see some hopefully significant price appreciation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that in order for that transition to happen from T+2 to real time, there's going to have to be some kind of, I don't want to say black swan, but some kind of event. I would think that happens that says, whoa, if we look at what happened here, if we just had on-demand liquidity, instant settlement, none of this would have happened. You know, what are we doing not having this? And then the attention completely switches around. and now Bitcoin and that whole ecosystem is no longer, the one. It's now look over here at this new stuff, and I think that there'll be some volatility. To say
Volatility is a good word.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're positioned well, then it'll be fun to watch. I have empathy for people that aren't, but I also don't. They've been able to reap rewards in the meantime here. So, I have clients that hold significant amounts of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they've diversified into some other areas to hedge, right? But their main convictions are still there, and they have made a lot of money by investing in those networks early. And they've been right for a long time. And a lot of them have been able to diversify their wealth into other investments, different verticals, real estate, different businesses that produce cash flow and income for them. They've been able to leverage those assets, take loans against them, which you have no tax implications, and then put that money to work somewhere else that's a significantly higher return than whatever the line of credit is. So that's one of the main things that we look at when we work with a client that has come into a lot of money with digital assets. Most of them don't want to lose exposure or have the tax implications for the sale of the asset, right? Especially if they have a low basis. Like we have some clients, I've met people that got into Bitcoin at $1, averaged in at $30. If you sold that now, you're looking at crazy capital gains, right? So if you're able to put that in a DeFi protocol or work with a lender and get a line of credit against it or a loan at a low interest rate, that's not income, it's not taxable, it's a loan. And as long as you repay it, don't have any problems. So that's one of the main strategies that we use in our office.
So let me ask you a question. Now, I know that, obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum, the main coins, would say somebody, hits on, I don't know, Tau or a random blockchain that isn't supported by PolySign or standard custody. Do you think are they working on being able to support any asset, or, because I think the future is it's all chains. I don't think it's going to matter as long as there's liquidity on a chain. That money will be able to flow around a lot easier with interoperability and stuff like that. So, what do you think? How's that going to play out? Because I think that's a problem right now, isn't it?
Yeah. So, our custodian that we work with, standard custody, is governed by the NYDFS or New York Financial Market Regulator, and they're very particular about what assets they allow custody on. You can't even buy XRP if you live in New York, even though it's been regulated a non-security at this point.
That changed.
Oh, did it change?
I live in New York now, and Bitstamp Exchange, because of the partnerships, it's listed on there. Yep.
Well, good. The solution previous to that was file an LLC or a trust in Wyoming and then be able to purchase it through that entity. But anyway, I'm glad to hear that. And so, but because the regulator is so stringent, they're very limited in the scope of assets that they do support, like you mentioned. So there's only 31 assets, most of which are not, some of the more, the chains that might have significant return on them, right? So we're exploring other options. We've had discussions with Anchorage, with Kraken, Hex Trust, Komainu. I was just in Dubai, talked to the regulators there. So exploring some other options for custody provider, and hopefully, they'll be a little more accepting. Most of the time, in order for them to move and integrate, things are a lift, right? So you have to add these networks to the protocol that you're using that allows for the custody of these assets, and it has to be meaningful. So just to give you an example, standard custody, unless it's going to be $100 million worth of liquidity or value, that they're not going to get off the couch and try to make things happen. So to your point, as things do appreciate, I'm sure that there will be plenty of people that are running to the door to be willing to accept some of these other networks. But at this time, I don't see most people adding anything aside from like the top 20, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what the thing where I look at it. I like the utility coins. I really try to focus on them and stuff like Casper and stuff like Block V or just some of these real world asset plays like Polytrade and Relio. Some of the stuff on Stellar. Like if it's an altcoin that's on Stellar, can they custody it if it's a native asset, or does it have to just be the main one?
Yeah, so they can. So if the native chain supported,
Okay.
they can support issued assets on that network. So layer twos would have the capability. There's still some lift for that, but it's a lot easier than integrating a completely separate chain into their platform. And I'm speaking from the corner of standard custody. I'm familiar with their protocol and what it takes there. I'm sure that some of these other providers, it's definitely not as large of a lift because they don't really have some of the features and functionality that's inherent to PolySign's protocol. A lot of these custodians, like Digital Trust, even Anchorage or Kraken, they're going to hold. Well, I don't know about Kraken. Anchorage is this way. They have your assets on a ledger in a level 4 facility. So there's armed guards, security cameras, the whole nine. And somebody goes in there at 4:00 and sees your keys while they issue a transaction. They do have insurance on that, but it's not anywhere near as significant as some of the other providers. Hex Trust is the same way. Their cold storage is, again, like a ledger device. It could be a Trezor, Decent, Ledger in a level 4 facility that a person goes in and interacts with when you want to make a withdrawal. So I think that that'll change. I'm hopeful that these protocols get built out that allow for, no human interaction, and it's an algorithm. And that's currently what PolySign provides for standard custody and trust.
Yeah, and yeah, that's one. The guys that are in our group there, when Link 2 had that special when non-accredited investors could buy in for that little window there, and a lot of people took advantage of that. So that was exciting to see that they, I know Link 2, they made out well, but just allowing people to have access to it, I thought that was really cool. So PolySign was the other one in Link 2's portfolio that we had looked at for that reason. We need the ability for a custodian to have any chain you want. Some of these new AI coins like Cubic is a project that we really like right now, and the wallet is so clunky, it's barely on any exchanges. But if this coin does really well, you'd hope, and that's where they have the ability quickly to add that chain to their list or the back end.
Ideally, in the future, you have ICOs in qualified custody. So, and that comes with regulation, right? Right now, they do these airdrops for people that are already holding something else. Or if you do have an ICO outside the U.S., you can buy in. It's kind of like it is an investment contract. It's technically a security. But you could just register with the SEC and do a securities offering, issue a SAFT, which is a simple agreement for future tokens, tokenize the equity in that SAFT, hold that in qualified custody, and then atomically swap that for the token that was issued into qualified custody as an ICO. So I think that's coming. But yeah, until then, you're going to have to deal with, like, I'll give you an example. I got in XDC at 0.03 of a penny. And you had to buy Ethereum and send it to this obscure wallet and then convert it. And then it was XDC E, and then it moved to XDC, whatever else it was later on. You had to convert that. You have to be on it. You have to really have a technical understanding of some of this stuff in order to be able to participate early on in things. And if you don't, then you kind of miss the boat on it. So I'm with you. I'm hopeful that in the future there's a way for people to participate in these things easier. But at the same time, if grandma can do it, probably the money's all been made anyway. So you kind of have both ends.
Yeah, there was a question here for Thomas. What states or territories do you operate in?
Globally, yeah, we hold assets for anybody across the globe in our custody. We have people in the UK, Japan, Australia, South America, Middle East, here in the US, Canada. And we have partnerships with people in the majority of jurisdictions that allow us to, build out the estate and also get things situated before price appreciation happens and make sure you're set up.
Yeah. So I've been with paying attention to kind of what Europe has trying to do with MICA over there.
Mhm.
And I thought, it looked good on the surface. And I saw this conference the other day, and these guys were on stage, and they were all from different parts of Europe. And they were just blasting it, saying that it's an absolute joke because if we try to enforce this stuff in Europe and you have Dubai or some other jurisdiction that doesn't enforce these rules, you're going to have regulatory arbitrage. People are just going to leave, and we're going to be stuck here with no one here. We're going to have all these rules, but no companies.
Yeah. Again, so I was just in Dubai. They do have a regulatory framework there, but they're very accepting and trying to foster innovation in the space. I applaud them for everything that they're doing. And it's a interesting line to walk, to be a regulator, but also try to foster growth in business in a certain vertical. They have a regulator that's specific to digital assets. So the VARA, which is the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority there in Dubai. And then they have other regulators that deal with different financial products, and they kind of like step on each other's toes a little bit because their swim lanes aren't completely defined yet. But they do have free zones, and those free zones you have to be approved to be able to work in. But they have pretty open swim lanes and kind of just a general guideline on how people are supposed to operate. And so you're able to go there and kind of build your stuff out. And then when it comes time, you're kind of under regulatory supervision. And then you can make sure that you're in alignment with that as your project progresses, which I really like. And then I think that there'll end up being some type of global framework for this stuff. There has to be. Otherwise, to your point, people are just going to go to whatever jurisdiction they can innovate in. Singapore, Switzerland, Dubai, to name a few. Those are the few that I see people kind of flocking to really, benefit and build their stuff out. The US, the EU is doing a good job with what they have. I think they're at least trying to introduce regulation that allows for, companies to come there and work. Tax laws in the UK are rough, man. I would, yeah. If you're operating there, just have some entities set up some other places so that you could make sure that you're not having to pay the monarchy so much money. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that there needs to be some type of global framework.
Yeah. I don't see how this technology, it moves so fast. If you drag along and you wait 6 months later, you're already behind another ball. And I just, with AI coming and how fast that gets better, I just wonder if we almost did the right thing by not jumping out and making regulations that choked everything off, just sitting back and watching around the world. It's like, hey, that works, that didn't work. I think that could be a good thing.
Well, that's exactly what Hester Pierce said when I spoke with her at Georgetown. I guess it was about a month ago now. She was there at the fireside chat and was asked some of those questions, and that's what they're doing there at the SEC. And a lot of the regulators here in the US are kind of letting other people make moves first, seeing what works and what doesn't, and then trying to take the best from those circumstances and, form what we're going to bring in. Hopefully, within the next 12 months.
Yeah, that would be nice, because I think that it's what's holding so many people. Just need to know, okay, what are the rules? Just what's just stable coins. I think that's the start. We
Yep.
need to iron that out, because the whole tether thing, it's just been this looming black swan that is inevitably gonna pop. I don't know. If you're half your volumes on Tron alone, okay, that's right there is a red flag, I think. And that's got to work itself out too. And I see certain things with Japan over there, and Circle is pushing USDC in Japan. Circle's working with Stellar, pushing in there. They're trying to get USDC as the stable coin of the world, it seems like to me, and that almost could not replace, but the petrodollar. Losing that, what better way to supplement it than have everybody want stable coins?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that we'll get stablecoin regulation sooner than later. And I think, to your point, there'll probably be some catalyst that moves that forward, probably sooner than later. But yeah, USDC, that's the prominent one here in the US. They were just in Congress with, Coinbase, talking about Tether evading, well, not necessarily Tether, but people operating on Tether's network evading sanctions, not having to deal with KYC, AML compliance, potentially, having money laundering and providing liquidity and exchanging things for illicit activities. I think that there should be oversight on stuff. I don't know that the government needs to know everything, but there are bad actors out there, and if you could make sure that stuff wasn't going on or catch it early on, then I think that's a good thing. It's just you don't want that to become like a totalitarian state like China, where they can shut your stuff down for no reason. A lot of big tech already does that. They'll demonetize you on a platform or remove your account if they don't agree with what you said, or you said something that is against, their guidelines. It's, people complain about there's not freedom of speech. Well, you technically agreed to all of their rules when you came on their platform. So technically they can do what they're doing. Does it make it right? It's up for debate still, but with stablecoin regulation, we've already got the bill in Congress. It just has kind of sat on the floor, hasn't passed the Senate or the House. And so French Hill said that we should expect that to go through sometime here in Q1. We got 16 days left. So I'm hoping he's right. I'm hoping they move pretty quickly here.
Yeah, that'd be nice, because I think the stock market typically selling may go away. I think that'll be probably pretty close to playing out like every other dragon year. I was just watching a stream about that. It seems like April, May, June typically not good year for the stock market in the dragon year, but after that, if we get regulation, if we could get the tether thing over with, or if problems with the ETF liquidity, I just don't see how. Okay, the ETF comes out. How are you going to release the ETH ETF? And if they go through Grayscale's list there and keep releasing them, they have to have instant settlement. You can't have 6 or 7 different ETFs out with them settling in 2 days.
There'll be substantial losses at some point. I mean, we just saw a drawdown in the market last night. 8% in a day. In the traditional stock market, there's limit down, right? They'll halt trading. You can't do that with crypto. there's no halting. And the majority of both markets, the stock market and crypto, is traded by bots. So if you continually had sell orders met, and there was enough pressure on something, you're not going to be able to halt that like you can on a stock. So losses could be pretty substantial. And we always see a 30 or 40% drawdown in a Bitcoin bull market. Like, that's just inevitable. That's going to happen, and it's going to be a flash crash. And if it doesn't recover quickly, these investment banks are going to have exposure for significant losses. There's obviously enough buying pressure right now. The inflows were actually like greater this morning after the pullback happened. But if you saw a greater downturn than that, people might get scared, especially people that aren't used to the volatility in crypto. If you saw a pullback, at let's say 50%, which could happen, especially if there was something to go on with Tether or something else in the market, people might flip and be bearish. And if that's the case, and there's significant selling on top of that pull down that's already happened, you're going to have a continual down pressure on Bitcoin. Right now, it's good. It's got a continual buy pressure. It's staying elevated and continue to climb higher. But what happens when institutional players flip the other way on it? We're in uncharted territory. You've got the price rising while there's more liquidations on exchanges right now, which is unusual. If you look at that chart, it's separated from how it normally acts. So just have to see, what happens with that. If they can't cover those losses, they're going to have to pull from other locations. And that's why you see the downtrend in the whole crypto market. So I don't know if people know that or not, but like Bitcoin, people have leveraged longs or shorts. And when they get liquidated, they've got to pull from other positions to cover those losses. And so that's why when you see a large wick on Bitcoin, the rest of the market tanks too, because those longs have to take collateral from those other positions and sell those positions in other coins to cover their losses. And so you see a downtrend in the whole market. So that would be the same case. I'm sure if there was continual selling pressure on Bitcoin from the investment banks, it's not going to bode well for the rest of the marketing, either.
Yeah, I think I just heard Craig Wright, fake Toshi there, finally got settled. I heard he was going to dump 100,000 Bitcoin, he was saying. I don't know if that was just like him just being mad because he knew he was going to lose the case and just say screw. I don't know, but if that could be an event right there that just shocks the market.
Well, there's multiple of those, right? So you've got all of these large funds that have aggregated huge positions. Any one of those, if they were to dump all at one time, would cause significant losses. You've got Mt. Gox. Supposedly, at some point, they're going to bring those back onto the market and make those people whole who had their Bitcoin stolen from that exchange in 2014. At this point, like, those people had Bitcoin at $500. So, like, if you magically got 100 Bitcoin, let's say you had 100 Bitcoin at $500, and now you get 100 Bitcoin back today at $75,000. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I'm selling a lot.
Yeah, but I'm going to sell it, or most people will. Most people don't realize you can collateralize it, take loans against it.
Yeah.
They're just going to liquidate, right? And then you got Satoshi's wallet, which randomly got a $23 million deposit earlier this year. So that'll have to be KYC'd, apparently, is the legislation around that. And it holds over 1 million Bitcoin. So that wallet, if it's in the U.S. government, holds a significant amount of Bitcoin too. There's just a lot of large players that could dump onto the market, or in coordination could dump on the market, to cause a significant price drop. So, people want to say it's decentralized, and it is to a point, but
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I don't think Bitcoin has failed at what it set out to be. It failed as payments. And we can now say, okay, that's great. It's digital gold, it's a store of value. So now what do we use for payments? And I just feel like it's XRP, the banks, and for cross-border big payments, and XLM is going to take over retail. We've been really trying to and paying attention to Stellar and some of the new projects like Velo and Stronghold that are really tackling like the merchant payments and rewards and all that for retail. So it just looks to me like they have an advantage so far in the competition.
Yeah, I'd agree. There'll be a lot of niche solutions that are built out on top of these networks that provide, enterprise applications to businesses. Ripple uses XRP and the XRPL to settle wholesale payments, back-end settlement for banks and other applications. And then you've got, like you mentioned, XLM, Hyperledger. Spoken to a lot of institutions that settle merchant and retail payments that are tied into that network. Hyperledger Bosu seems to be the main application that they use for that. And to your point, there's different tokens. I don't know that some of those will do as well as people think. Rewards is a good way to get tokens into an ecosystem without issuing an ICO. And those can hold value. If they're used to settle transactions within an ecosystem, I think that would provide more value. But until we have stablecoin regulation, I think that'll remain, kind of, it won't happen as much. So just waiting on that. And if you don't, one of the things in the stablecoin bill is if you haven't issued a stablecoin yet, when it's pushed through, you won't be able to for 2 years. So kind of builds a monopoly around what's already in the space when that happens.
Interesting. Well, yeah, it'll be a good thing for everybody, I think. And I think Circle will IPO this year. I'm hearing rumors that I think Ripple is going to be the first company that launches their stock on the blockchain. That's my tinfoil hat. I think I could see that, and then partnering, I don't know, with Uphold, or I don't know what wallet you would do that through, but maybe there's something being built in the background that could tie all this together. But what better way than to say, look, we're going to be the first stock to ever launch on the blockchain, and you could just create a huge media frenzy with that. So that's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, so we hold stock. We sit directly on their cap table through one of the funds that I manage, and it's currently not tokenized. I can tell you that. Now, the DTC acquired Securrency last year in September, and that is they rebranded that as the DTCC's Digital Assets Division. And then you've got R3 and Project Ion that's supposedly running in tandem with the current settlement system that they have. So for that infrastructure to operate like that, the items there would have to be tokenized, or there would have to be tokenized representation of the stocks in that system. Yeah, I mean, it's completely possible that Ripple could be the first IPO that, their stock was converted from traditional private equity into a tokenized form when it was issued to the brokers. They would have to IPO significantly later, probably for that transition to happen. Maybe early 25 would be my expectation for an IPO for them. And I think that they are probably more likely to IPO outside the US than on the New York Stock Exchange, just with the current relationship they have with the SEC. The SEC would have to approve their S1. They're currently in a lawsuit with them. Brad said multiple times that, they don't need to IPO. The only reason they've issued the tender offers is to provide liquidity to, their employees and the investors that they have. Their last tender offer was $61.48 a share, and they bought back, I think it ended up being like 3-point-something% was the most you could participate in that if you were on the cap table. 3.1 or 3.2% of your shares is what you could sell back. So, I know a lot of employees there, like Bob Way, who would like to, get their hit from that stock at an IPO. and be able to retire. So, I'm hoping that it's sooner than later personally, just because, for my biases.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if they were to IPO in 2024, you're probably looking at maybe the London Stock Exchange.
Cool. So yeah, so then I could put the tinfoil hat away for a little while. Because yeah, that does make sense. I never really thought that deep behind. It just sounds like it could, but with on the back end, that would be a lot of
It's a big
hurdles.
lift.
That would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Unless you'd have to work with all the clearinghouses and the brokers to get that, moved over, or already have systems running in tandem. Fidelity and Goldman probably would be okay with that. BNY Mellon probably be okay with that. But there's some smaller ones, that probably may or may not be on that system. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's already there, ready to go. But yeah, I think the stablecoin component first, and then the rest of that. There'll be a Cambrian explosion, like Chris Larson says. Once this stuff actually does get regulated and it's given the green light, I think you'll see a rapid rush and migration pretty quickly across things where it's kind of a no-brainer to tokenize them. And then, further and further that'll happen through the economy over the next decade.
Yeah, I think so too. I think what really excites me is just the amount of people right now who have the ability to be their own business, but don't even realize it right now. If you say you make something, you make blankets or you make t-shirt, whatever it is, there's going to be these platforms. Basically, instead of scrolling through Tinder and looking at chicks, you'll be able to scroll through sellers on like an online marketplace, and like stuff like that. I think is just so cool, where it just brings the tokenization and Web3, and not even tokenization, but just the Web3 marketplaces where all these different sellers can be on one platform. And then we're obviously going to need our digital IDs. I think that too is that's a different discussion with the need for that. But I just see the different opportunities that are already being worked on. And I'm just so excited for like 5 years from now, especially when these things really start to pick up and AI is efficient. And I think we need AI that can govern on AI itself. I think that's the ultimate piece of the puzzle, because these technologies move so fast. I don't even know how regulators keep up with it. I think it's just going to be a nonstop headache until there's some sort of global AI system that can control. I don't even know how that plays out, but we are in for some very interesting and amazing times ahead, though.
Yeah. Have you ever read The Future is Faster Than You Think?
No, I haven't.
Check out the book. It escapes me who wrote it, but it was like 2018 or 2019 when they wrote that book. And they talked about all of the different converging technologies, right? So you have like Moore's Law, where technologies go exponential, and we're like right at the precipice of that before we go vertical. With the convergence of AI, blockchain, smart contracts, 3D printing, biotech, like CRISPR. Like there's just so many different technologies that are progressing so quickly, and then you get a multiplier effect as those things converge, right? So in the book it talks about, like, you're probably around for Blockbuster. I have this nostalgia for Blockbuster from my youth, right?
Oh yeah.
Used to go to the video store with my parents and pick out a movie, and we'd get candy and come back to the house. Now that doesn't, like, you don't go to the video store, you just do Netflix, right? Blockbuster had the capability to buy Netflix for $50 million and scoffed at it and passed. And they completely got taken over, right? And that was like, over a 10-year period that transition took place. Maybe even longer than that. Maybe that's truncated. It's probably a longer period than that. But there will be, over the next 20 years, like 3 or 4 of those, or maybe more, where an entire new innovation comes to the forefront and is adopted at scale and used, and then something else engulfs it within a couple years because of how fast they'll be iterating on top of each other with AI. Like, so if you're not able to be agile and pivot or see what's coming next in order to be able to acquire that company before it eats you, like, it's just going to be a crazy time to be alive for how fast things move from here. And I don't think most people are aware of the progression of how much faster that's going to be.
Yeah, and the one thing that I worry about is, like, if you're an attorney right now, how do you compete with ChatGPT? If you're like
You
a
suppress it.
financial advisor, if you're an accountant, if you're any market, it's very hard. There's gonna be so many whole entire industries that you're not gonna need 90% of the actual people anymore, because AI will be able to look through every lawsuit in history instantly. How could one human? You can never do that. And that's the thing, what happens when we have, the backbone of this country, where people that have had jobs for 20 years making six figures, all of a sudden their job's gone and replaced by AI. That's what I think about. It's like, how do we solve that or prevent it?
You don't need to prevent it. So this, and I'm going to sound dystopian. And most people will have a hard time with this concept. I did. So right now, the value is produced by human capital. People do jobs, people go to work, people work, there's goods made, things happen. The more automated that becomes, the less the human needs to be involved in order for that value to exist. So computers can actually create the value. And because the costs associated with that become less and less, technology is deflationary. Up to this point over the last 20 years, it's been by about 7 to 9% a year. So if they hadn't printed any money, everything would have gotten 7 to 9% cheaper every single year, just because of how technology's progressed. Because you have new efficiencies, it reduces costs, and therefore, the cost of things should be reduced. But we've printed enough money to hold that 2% inflation, so we've really been printing like 10% of our money supply every year to meet the mandate. So, and then way more than that the last few years. But in the same concept, if you had a significant deflationary event because of all this technological advancement all at the same time, you could transition people into new roles or new jobs, because there will be. You still need creative stuff. Like, I don't know if you've asked ChatGPT to write a story or do stuff, and it's decent, but it's not like, if it wrote a symphony, it wouldn't be as good as Mozart. There's still a human element that we provide that it's not there for AI, and that's why it's artificial intelligence. It's not real. It augments our ability to perform things better or more efficient or faster. And so I think people will leverage AI to do jobs at a much higher capability than they currently do. We'll have to retool and re-educate people over the next decade to be able to operate in this new world, like you spoke about. But in the interim, we could actually, again, sounds dystopian, pay people UBI by printing money against the deflationary effect of this technology and hold price stability. But to your point, you have to have an AI that oversees everything, that allocates that capital appropriately, so that things don't collapse like they did in the Soviet Union. So I know, sounds socialistic, crazy, but I think that actually could happen. And then you provide a bridge for people, because they would have an income while they transitioned to these other jobs and retooled and reskilled themselves so that they could operate in another economy.
Yeah, no, I've been talking about UBI on streams for a long time, probably at least a year and a half now. That's how I think they're going to roll out. So many people are scared of all the CBDCs, and once that happens, and it's like, no, they couldn't roll it out in China. They couldn't do it in Nigeria. It's not happening that way. Can't shove it down your throat. The only way I could see it happening is it being an offer where they say, okay, if you're struggling, close down your bank account. and move into this new money, and we'll give you a $5,000 bonus, or so it's going to be on offer. So I think
they already did that with the checks during COVID, and people took them. I took them. If you get free money, people are going to take free money, even if it's programmed, right? But if I think everybody right now is complaining that the cost of living, the cost of food, the cost of just their basic living has doubled in the last 3 years, right? And so most people are at a point where their income hasn't increased in proportion to their expenses, and they're treading water. They've got to go get another job. They've got to get on OnlyFans. They've got to do something to be able to make up the difference. And they're really not even wealthier than they were. They're making less money in value than they were before, even if they're making 50% more than they were 3 years ago. But if the government could subsidize $3,000 a month that covered living expenses, food, and daycare, and that's all you could spend it on. Okay. So when they have programmable money, like that's all you can spend it on. And then if you go work a job, now you can breathe, right? Now you're making your $3,000 plus the government's $3,000 that covers your stuff. And now you can like pursue other interests or start a side hustle or do a passion, or you're not working yourself to the bone just to meet ends meet. And so that's how I view UBI. I don't think it'll be crippling for people. I don't think the government's going to abuse it. At least I hope they don't. They could, but I hope they don't. I think it'll provide relief for people and actually allow them to. I think we'll get like another Renaissance period if they brought in UBI, because people could express themselves, and people that didn't want to work, like, don't have to. You could go paint, or you could do something else to express yourself and be part of the creator economy and sell your painting online, or whatever else you're going to produce or provide value with, instead of working in your 9 to 5 that you hate. You know what I mean? So at least that's how I see it, and how I hope it works out. It may be completely different, but that's my hope.
Yeah, I really like that idea, and I think that right there is a fine way. I'm good with having the CBDC, or have UBI with, you can spend it on your rent, on food, or gas, for whatever it is, those three things. That way it can't be abused. It helps everybody. That's fine. It's not dystopic. And then you go get your regular job, and you get paid in USDC or whatever, that you can do whatever you want with. And I don't see the United States is the land of the free. To these things, technology, it's like a gun. You can use a gun. You give it to a hunter and a farmer. It's a tool that provides their family, feeds them. Or in the other sides, you can kill someone with it, and it's the work. They need to be taken away. It's all perspective, and I think that I never looked at it that way, with the UBI being like a staple to help and relieve people of the crippling inflation for just necessities. And then that does allow you 10 hours extra to spend time with your family. It just alleviates the negative everything. And hopefully we can get away from this no-sum game that that just plagues us.
Yeah. I think that, and they'll have to inflate, they're going to have to be able to print money in that capacity to be able to do that, to hold price stability against the deflationary effect of the technology. And I've put this thesis together by watching like 40 different macroeconomists that are specific in different verticals. I haven't heard anybody else talk about it like this. Like, most people don't look at the deflationary side of the technology. There's really only one person. He thinks we're headed for a deflationary collapse. But I think like, if you were going to print a whole bunch of money, you'd front run that.
Yep.
Kind of like they've done. So anyway, that's my hope, is that, with the UBI, they program it where you have to use it for necessities, and it covers basic costs of living for people, and then it allows them the breathing room to go work whatever job they want, to be able to earn an income, or explore other passions that they, like, how many people are fantastic writers or singers or artists or gamers or whatever their real passion is, that they have to go work 80 hours a week just to make ends meet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they're crippled by that. The world's never going to know the beauty of whatever they could have produced because they're stuck doing this other deal just to live and support their family. So that's the way I look at it. I think it'll free some people, and that comes with costs. Everything does. It's never good or bad. It's always somewhere in the middle. So
yeah, and we know it's only a matter of time. It's an election year. They're going to have to cut rates, and I think back in the pandemic was almost a test to see what happens if you had a massive deflationary event where the supply chain shut down. What I think it was a giant test, a precursor for what's to come. And yeah, I'm excited, man. Though I just fear that that the gap between the rich and the poor it's just going to increase, that, and assets and houses are just going to keep getting more expensive, and that wealth gap is probably going to exist where there's just going to be such extreme wealth at the top. But you know what? If that's inevitable, money always flows to the top 1% everywhere. That's just capitalism.
Well, it flows to people that know how to allocate it, right? And you want that to happen. You want money to go to the people that know how to allocate it and build things and do the right stuff with it. I like capitalism for that reason. But at the same time, I think the fractionalization of the economy and your capability to invest in stuff will allow people to own little pieces and retain residual income on things that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So like if you had a tokenized stock market, you don't have to have stock splits. The whole reason for a stock split is to make it more affordable so people can invest. So like Amazon gets to $4,000. Most people can't afford $4,000 for one stock. So they do a 20-to-1 and now it's $200 again. Okay. And then people can buy one share of Amazon at $200. But if you had a tokenized stock and it was down to the thousandth of a share, you could invest $4 into Amazon. Right. So I think it'll democratize a lot of things that people just don't think about. And I think you'll still have opportunity. I don't think it's going to crush people's opportunity on stuff. I think it'll actually open up more opportunities. Right now, I don't want to say it's the easiest time it has ever been to get rich, but honestly, yeah,
it is.
The internet's opened up ways for people to produce revenue, and the other piece is you're able to connect with people that you never would have met, right? So the largest predeterminant of how wealthy you become is what zip code you're born in. Like if you look at all the other variables, where you are born determines more about your income over your lifetime than almost anything else. But I think that's changing with your capability to connect with other people through the internet. And so you have your shot. It's just, are you going to take advantage of it or not?
Yeah, that's really well. That's a really well said. And yeah, it's never have we been able to with technology like this where even when I started in commercial real estate in 2008, right at the worst time, everyone thought I was nuts. I had no clue. I didn't know better, and I could never reach a CEO. I had a book that was 6 inches thick of every single retail company out there. You had to call directors. It was a nightmare. Nowadays, one message, you have access to CEOs. On Twitter, you can get their attention. It's just a new world, and it's exciting, man. And I think this is a great place to cut it off here. And for all 112 of you watching, follow Jake Beyond Broke on Twitter. Everything's in the description. And I think this bull market is going to shock a lot of people. And for everyone here that we've been building our bags, preparing for it. And I think Jake will be, he's doing awesome things and setting the path for what to do with your crypto to keep it, not have to sell it and try to buy back that's not the way to do it. Jake has figured out great ways to maintain your wealth. And
I'll say it's never wrong to take profit. Okay. You never go broke taking profit. So I've made the mistake in the past of not selling anything. I would just say, if you are going to sell, one, understand the tax implications associated with that. Preferably you're doing it out of an LLC so you can use that income and appropriate it somewhere where you get, a way to offset the tax implications. And then two, know what you're going to do with it. Like, I see so many people that have an exit plan, like we talked before we got on here, and you were like, you know, what would you tell people that if they make $1 million or $2 million, what do they need to do? And I'm like, they should have a plan before they do that, so that they know what they're going to do with it and how to set up their estate and have educated themselves. And if you don't, you know, find good people around you. It doesn't even have to be us. You know, with Digital Ascension Group, I've tried to build this out and make it super easy for people. But if you have good people in your network that understand wealth management and estate planning and all the stuff that you need to understand, just go to those people. It's not a whole lot different with digital assets. There's definitely some changes there. But yeah, just surround yourself with good people before that happens. Because after it happens, you don't know people's intentions. And have a place that you're going to put that money that's going to make you more money and give you some type of income. Don't if you're here, if you want the Lambo, I'll tell you the secret to the Lambo. Okay, before we cut it off, go buy a car wash or a business or something else that pays you whatever the lease on the Lambo is every month. Okay, and use the money that you took out instead of putting $500,000 down on a Lambo. Go buy a car wash or something else that pays you the $6,000 a month to lease the Lambo. Okay. And then when you don't want the Lambo anymore, you still got the $6,000 a month coming and you didn't lose your value. So, it's my tip for the day. But, anyway, thank you so much for having me, brother. I've really enjoyed this. And you have a great audience, and, just keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. Like I said, everyone here, follow Jake on Twitter, follow him on YouTube. He's always putting out great content, great streams, and I'm there learning as much as possible. And hopefully I'll see you guys in some of those chats. And Jake, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be doing some business after this bull run.
Absolutely, brother. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, bro.